Hi, everyone. My name is Deborah Sermonaro Eldridge, and I am the owner and attorney of DCE Law. So, welcome to the 5 steps to setting up your business. I'm happy that you have decided to join us and invest in this opportunity. So, I am just going to be covering basically 5 steps that you need to be aware of in setting up your business and thinking about. How this happened is a year and a half ago, I started my own online business in social retail. And I realized going through all of these courses and everything that everybody was talking about how you get views, how you do this, how you do that, but nobody was talking about how you legally go through the process of setting up your business. I thought everybody needs to know how to do that so they're doing it correctly. So that's how these ideas for business startup were formed. And I think it's important for everybody to know what their opportunities are and what the different aspects are of setting up a business. So let's go ahead and get started. And let me start by sharing my screen with you so you can see and go through this whole process with me. Oh, there we go. Well, it would help if we start at the beginning. So with the 5 steps to setting up your business, we're going to be looking at 5 basic areas. So the 5 areas of setting up your business include your business startup and choosing the right organizational structure to begin with. Now, I had a live this morning on Instagram where I talked about the differences between LLCs and corporations because I probably get that question every other day from people, and whether you really even need to use either business organizational type to set up your business. And it really depends on what your goals are that you want to achieve. Then we're going to talk about choosing the right name and how important that is and how you go about making sure that name is also available. Third is our cost and commitment. So the cost of creating your business legally and your commitment to following through on it. Finally, we'll go through the setup steps for doing so. And last are the federal and local filing requirements that you have. So with that in mind, we'll go on to our next one, which is breaking it down, why it's important to choose the right type of business structure. We're going to start by talking about the fact that taxation is important, liability is an aspect, so you want to be protected from liability, and then ease of operation. So with ease of operation, if you look at a sole proprietor runs their business on their own. It's just them. And in running their business on their own, that means that they are it. And as a sole proprietor, they still want to be recognized as a separate business. There comes in the DBA. The DBA is the doing business as, and it is actually considered a fictitious name. And you are allowed to do that even as an individual, create a fictitious business name under which you choose to operate. And it's really easy to do. And what it does is it allows you to operate under your social security number. You can set up a separate employer identification number if you want to, but why go through that hassle and step? Because then you have the reporting requirements for that separate employer identification number when you can just use your social security number and just keep it simple. If you're just testing the waters, or it's not going to be a huge business, it's something that you're doing on a side, or you're not planning on growing. Here's the kicker. If you decide you want to grow and go bigger, you take that DBA and you convert it into a corporation. You can do that with the steps that are required. From a liability standpoint, the problem with the sole proprietorship and the DBA is you are liable for anything that happens. But this is a good option for anybody who is in a low liability profession. So if you are acting as a subcontractor to a company, if you are acting as just like an educator, you're providing certain basic services that really don't expose you to liability to any significant amount, then that's fine. And you can also purchase liability insurance if you wanted to, if you were worried about that. The next thing is a partnership. In the state of Florida, we have partnerships, and I do want to preface everything by making sure everybody knows that I'm an attorney here in the state of Florida. So all of the legal advice that I give is for individuals and residents of the state of Florida who want to do business here in the state of Florida. I cannot give legal advice outside the state, so everything is based on the laws of the state of Florida and how we operate here. So a partnership, Florida recognizes the Uniform Partnership Act, which takes you through the process, which would be a long process for me to explain, but it takes you through the process of creating your partnership in your partnership agreement. You again would have a separate employee identification number for that entity as well. The LLC, limited liability company. So when we talk about LLCs, that's what we mean. We're referring to a limited liability company. Does it have great opportunities? Sure, but it is not as easy to operate as a corporation. Your corporate form of structure is the easiest way to operate. Now let's talk a minute about the LLC and the corporation. If we look at it from a taxation purpose, from a taxation standpoint, the sole proprietor, any money that comes in is going to be taxed at your individual rate. No ifs, ands, or buts about that, right? As a partnership, you and your partner are going to split the proceeds, net proceeds, and it's going to be treated as income to you individually. No problem. Now, the only thing is you do have to pay estimated taxes on a quarterly basis, or you're supposed to anyway. The LLC is the same way. So an LLC has the flow through income. It is not a corporation. It is not treated as a corporation. It has no identifying marks of a corporation other than it gets to choose subchapter S corporate status for tax filing purposes with the IRS. That's only for tax filing purposes with the IRS. It doesn't mean you get shareholder distributions. It doesn't mean that you get to say you're a corporation. You're absolutely not. You're only an LLC and therefore have limited liability, but you do have liability up to the extent of your investment in it. So an LLC from a tax standpoint gets treated just like a subchapter S corporation if you apply for that recognition with the Internal Revenue Service. That means as a subchapter S company, that money will flow through to the members of the LLC as if it was their individual income. But again, they have to report their income quarterly. So you do have to complete your quarterly employee estimated taxes. For the corporation standpoint, when you create your corporation, it's a C, what we call a C Corp. That changes very quickly. You get your C Corp, you file for your employer identification number, and then you change and you file immediately for your subchapter S treatment. So that means as a corporation, you're getting to be treated as a subchapter S. So any money that flows through that corporation flows on to the shareholders as individual income to them. So if you have 4 shareholders, that means you're dividing your income 4 ways. Everybody gets 25% of the net income, whatever's left after taxes, insurance, and all of the expenses. This is what's left. You're splitting it 4 ways. The other good thing about that is that even if it's you, you're getting 100% of the income, right? But you're also an employee and an officer of the corporation and a shareholder. Now, here's where it's really important. As a shareholder of a corporation, you are entitled to receive shareholder distributions. And shareholder distributions are taxed differently at your individual rate. So to offset your employment taxes, withholding, FICA, all of that that's coming out, you can take shareholder distributions. You can take them quarterly, you can take them semi-annually. It's up to you, but you get to take those as a shareholder of that organization, and the taxation is different. So that is a huge benefit to having the corporation, especially when you're just starting out. Now, I also said that you are an employee of the corporation. As an employee of the corporation, that means that you get paid as an employee. So you get paid as an employee with withholding coming out and your FICA. So you don't have to worry about filing for your estimated taxes on a quarterly basis because you're getting paid as an employee. So you don't have to worry about that either. So there are those benefits of being a corporation and then electing subchapter S treatment, which is what you do as both an LLC and a corporation, but you don't get the ability to take those shareholder distributions. The other thing is liability. From a liability standpoint, you have that limited liability with the LLC. Great. But even more so with a corporation, you have basically unlimited liability for the most part. Think about the umbrella in those Travelers commercials where the rain's coming down, but people are shielded because they have the Travelers insurance. Same idea with the corporate umbrella or corporate veil. As long as you are treating that corporation separate and apart from you, you are going through the right steps, that corporation is going to protect you from liability as long as you don't do anything to breach your duty to the organization and the shareholders of that organization. So that is wonderful. Or if you decide that you are going to personally guarantee any loans or notes, that's the only way you would be held personally liable for anything that happens in the course of the operating of the corporation. Ease of operation, corporations are so much easier to use from an annual operation standpoint. It's just reporting requirements, everything. It's just so streamlined and easier, but also the growth potential is so much easier. You don't have to worry about changing from an LLC to a corporation or this to that. Let's say you want to expand and become a franchise, or all of these things you've already got in place with the corporation. And then last but not least, when we look at the LLC versus a corporation, as long as you have 100 shareholders or less in a corporation, you can file for that subchapter S filing. So you just keep your shareholders below the required amount and you're good to go with the corporation. So the LLC, you're looking at members, and members are not shareholders, they're members. So they're treated differently. You can't get the shareholder distribution. You can't try and say that you are a corporation when you're not, but you can get the subchapter S corporate treatment for tax purposes. And that is important. So either way, you're good either way. I don't set up LLCs for clients. I will only set up corporations for clients. Now, with that said, let's take a look at names, because names are very important. Your name is your first point of recognition when somebody comes to you. So it's very important that you choose the right one. So with that in mind, let's take a look. Modere, huge company when it comes to nutraceuticals worldwide. Very well known for that. Their name is synonymous with it. Then you have Coca-Cola. Need I say anything more? Microsoft, Target, all of these company names. Target made that name famous when it came to retail, right? So it made it famous when it came to retail. Then we have the next one, which is how your name translates into your URL. So you've got your name and now it's translating into your URL. Microsoft, Target, Modere, Coca-Cola. You can see how these names translate into the company's URL and why doing these two steps at the same time, getting your name registered with the Secretary of State's Office, Division of Corporations, and obtaining your URL at the same time is so important. Again, you don't want those cyber squatters to come in, because what happens is when you apply for your corporate status or your LLC or your partnership or your DBA, there are what we call cyber squatters, right? So these entities are sitting out there just waiting to see these new names that pop up. When they pop up, what they do is they then go and they purchase the URLs, which is the website address, and turn around. So you go to purchase it a day or two later, and it's already purchased. You're like, and there's something that pops up that says, yo, you can buy it from me for $350. Well, why would you want to pay $350 when you could just pay $20 a year for that website name, or $16 a year or whatever it is. So it's very important, therefore, that once you know that name is available with the Secretary of State's office, Division of Corporations for Florida or for your state, you want to make sure that it's also secured as a URL, which is your address, and that you buy the URL either right before you file with the Secretary of State's office or right after. That's why you want to have 1 or 2 hours set aside to get all of this done at one time. Okay, so the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. Walt Disney World. Well, we know how, or Walt Disney, we know how famous he was, and we know the enterprise that he created. So with that in mind, let's take a quick look at the cost. Here I have a cost breakdown of the different areas that you can create as a company. We've got the DBA, the corporation, the LLC. So you can see that a corporation is $78.75 to file. The LLC is $155 to file, and the DBA is $50 to file. But associated costs, in every one that has some associated cost, you have $20 to $60 because you have to publish your proposed name in a newspaper of general circulation to make sure that nobody else is using that name. And as long as you don't have anyone contacting and saying, I'm using that name, you're fine. And then the newspaper issues you a certificate that says they certify that it was published, there were no issues, and you get to use it. Then you go ahead and you file with the $50 for the DBA, which is the fictitious name registration. Excuse me. Finally, if you're doing a corporation, it's $78.75 to file your articles of incorporation. If it's an LLC, it's $155. And the reason I say $155 is because that includes proof that it was accepted and filed with the Secretary of State's office. Going down below that, it's $48 to get your minute book as a corporation or $68 to get it as an LLC. The other costs are going to be your local licensing fees that can range anywhere from $10 to $150 on up, actually, depending on your profession. So those are your local requirements, because most municipalities and cities require you to obtain an occupational license. So you're going to look at obtaining an occupational license in the county where your primary business is located. And in doing so, that primary business, if it's located in Pinellas or St. Petersburg or Tampa or Orlando, you have to go there and find out what they require for the occupational license, because you can get fined if you don't file for it. Now, your timeline, really easy. Once you decide to take the step to start your own business, what you then want to do is just set aside an hour or two to get all of the stuff done at one time. Check the name availability, get your name and URL, apply for your employer identification number, get your IRS election completed, and then your final steps, as I just discussed. Let's go through this, though, on the next slide. So for the next slide, commitment and setting it up. You're going to go to the State of Florida Division of Corporations, which is www.sunbiz.org, and you can actually click on that link and it will take you right there. Complete a name search for whatever the name is that you want your organization to be called. If it's available, be prepared to file your documents. Then it will take you through what's called the e-filing of the Articles of Incorporation. Then you're going to complete the filing and pay the $78.75 and be done with it. That's done. Next, you're going to go and you're going to get your URL. I will tell you that I have a practice of checking to make sure the URL name is available before I even file with sunbiz.org, because it can be no more frustrating to a client or anyone trying to set up their business to go ahead and get the name with the Secretary of State's office, but then you can't get the URL. That's very frustrating for people. So we don't want that to happen. So it's a good practice to check both before you actually file with sunbiz.org. And if they are available in both places, I would actually purchase the URL first and then file with sunbiz.org just to be safe. You can use GoDaddy, Bluehost. I just use Wix, and sometimes I use GoDaddy just to purchase the website itself, because what's interesting is URLs are available on different URLs are available on different web hosting companies. So be aware of that. Just purchase the URL only. You don't have to purchase setting up a website or anything else. You just want the URL. It's only anywhere between $16 and $20 something a year, depending on the name choice. Use the same site to create your website if you want. The reason I list Wix is because Wix is very user friendly and has all the bells and whistles down to your shopping cart. If you're creating a shopping cart for whatever you're producing, very good, very user friendly. Then we're going to get you to your final steps, and your final steps are going to the federal websites and going to your local websites. So from the federal side, once you've got the other things done, you have filed with the Secretary of State's office, you are going now to www.irs.gov, and you are getting, not purchasing, you're applying for your employer identification number. And when you apply for that employer identification number, you're going to put all of your information in for your organization. You're going to set up an Internal Revenue Service account for that company, and that will make things so much easier for you. So you'll obtain your federal employer identification number, whether you're an LLC, corporation, or partnership. You're going to do that. And if you wanted to treat your DBA separately, you can get an employer identification number for your DBA, but it's not required. Finally, you're going to then move on to the next step, which is filing for Subchapter S election for tax purposes. And this applies only if you're an LLC or a corporation. So you file for your Subchapter S election for tax purposes. And what that means is that you get the opportunity to have that flow through income, right? And that's very important. Does it mean you're a corporation if you're an LLC? No, you are not a corporation. You do not get to take shareholder distributions because you are a member-based organization, not a shareholder-based organization. And so then from there, once all of that's done and you've got your Subchapter S file, they're going to ask for your federal employer identification number. They're going to ask for your social security number as a shareholder, all this information, very easy to complete. All of the forms now are e-filed forms, so it makes it so much easier. You don't have to worry about printing out documents, filling them out, scanning them in, getting them there. No, everything's very simple because it's e-filed. And then you're going to order your minute book. And your minute book is going to have, if you're a corporation, your bylaws in it, your certificates for your shares, your actual corporate seal is going to be in there. Very easy, very inexpensive. As far as, I pulled actually one of the less expensive websites to provide to all of you, BinderTech, and for $48 you can get a minute book. For a corporation, $68 for an LLC. Very reasonable, but you do want to make sure you get that done. And then finally, you have your local requirements where you have to reach out to your city or county and find out from them what the occupational license requirements are. It could cost you $10, it could cost you $20, it could cost you $100. I don't know, because every city, every county is different. So you do have to check with your local municipality regarding that. And then you're done. And you can get all of this done within an hour or two, depending on what's going on with your computers and whether you are being distracted by anything. So that is it in a nutshell. Know your direction, be aware of the startup cost, and be committed. That's the biggest thing, is being committed as well. So I am offering a live seminar on March 26th. It's going to be $77 a person, where I will literally take you through the steps, and you will have the opportunity to ask me questions at that time. It is a Saturday. We'll probably be doing it at noon again, so that everybody has the opportunity to attend and be there and get the information that you need and know that you're doing it right. So it's $77 for that. That does not include any of the filing fees for your organization. You have to actually be prepared to, as we're going through the class, take your time to go through the step of the filing and paying the filing fees and everything that's associated with that. But I am excited about it. Once you get into the course, I will go ahead and send you an invitation to the Facebook group. And you'll also be receiving some basic information and material for the just walking you through the steps of the whole system and how we go about doing it. So, which is exactly what we'll be doing in the live course on the 26th. So I'd love to see you there. And if you can make it wonderful, otherwise we do have the standalone course that is available for $67. And that is your self-paced course that you can do on your own. So thank you for joining us. I hope that you've learned something today. Drop me a message and let me know. Have a good one.